everyone, this is Michelle from the snooZze Clinic and welcome to another episode of Sleep Talk. Okay, I just realized that I've been so preoccupied recording everyone else's episode that I forgot my own. So until I was organizing, collating all the episodes earlier, and I was like, oh no, where's mine? I've only done one today and that was the opening episode. Yep, so here I am, squeezing in some time to record my own episode. So what am I going to talk about today? Okay, so we're going to look at the family's role in supporting a patient with obstructive sleep apnea. Yeah, the family plays a very important role in helping to make the patient's CPAP journey much better, much easier. Yeah, with a little bit of encouragement and a bit of reminders, a bit of nagging. Yeah, it usually helps the patient. Okay, so let's look at the first role of the family. Okay, so by family, well, you don't necessarily have to be related by blood. I mean, well, sometimes close friends that live together, they can be considered family. Yeah. So the first role that I'm going to talk about is that of whistleblower. Okay, so more often than not, I think patients with obstructive sleep apnea seek treatment because their spouses or their girlfriends, their boyfriends drag them to the ENT because of their unbearable snoring. Yeah, I can imagine what would have happened if the spouses or the girlfriends and boyfriends didn't drag these people. These people would probably have unaddressed sleep apnea for a long time or maybe for the rest of their life. So the family members are usually the first ones to tell the patient, hey, look, there's something wrong. You're snoring so loudly. It's disturbing all of us. I think you need to seek help. Yeah, because some patients don't know, they can't hear themselves snoring, and they might not know that they stop breathing when they sleep. Of course, some know because some actually wake up gasping or some wake up with palpitations. And yeah, for those patients, they more or less know that they've got obstructive sleep apnea. Yeah, but there are patients that are totally clueless. If you ask them, they tell you, no, I slept well last night. If you ask them if they have excessive daytime sleepiness, do they feel tired in the day, they tell you no. Why? Because they've been living like this for like 20, 30, 40 years. If they have not had any good sleep to compare with, how would they know if they slept well, or what are they to compare their current status with? Yeah. So family members, yes, as I mentioned, very important. You need to be the one to highlight the issue to the patient that he or she needs to seek help. So, okay, besides being that of a whistleblower, I guess the next step that the family members play is that of a counselor. Because yes, you bring up the issue, and the patient goes, or the person with obstructive sleep apnea says, okay, yes, I know. But it doesn't mean he or she's going to do anything, right? Many of the patients or many of the people who have obstructive sleep apnea tend to procrastinate and not seek help until very obvious symptoms start surfacing. Yeah? So as the family member, you would probably need to counsel the patient a bit, tell the patient the pros and cons, of not seeking help. Firstly, he or she may be disturbing the peace of the whole family with his or her thunderous snores. Secondly, all the family members can actually express their fear of losing him or her should anything happen as a result of prolonged, untreated, unaddressed obstructive sleep apnea. Things like stroke, things like sudden cardiac death. Yeah, and I think when family members speak to the patient, they will normally feel bad about it and go like, okay, fine, I'll go. Not that I want to, but since you put it that way, if anything happens to me, all of you are not going to be able to cope. So, okay, I'll go. Yeah. So of course, half the time, the family member, usually the wife or the husband, besides surfacing the issue, besides counseling the patient, would have to be the one to Google for the doctor to go to. Yeah. So these are little things which help the patient to kickstart their journey in managing the obstructive sleep apnea. So what happens after the patient is diagnosed, after the patient has been told to go on the CPAP? One of the roles the family member has, that of a snitch. Yeah, it doesn't sound too good, but it's good for the patient. Sometimes patients tell us things which may not be true. Okay, so for example, patient says, oh, I haven't been using it because I haven't been feeling well, my nose has been blocked. I think, this mask is not suitable for me. Every time I use it, I wake up panicking. And a lot of stories like this, right? And then when we have a snitch beside the patient, he or she will normally inform us like, no, actually it's not that. He just doesn't want to use it. He finds that it's not helping him. He finds that the pressure is too strong, it's too noisy, things like that. So if we hear comments or feedback like it's too noisy, right, we know that it's because of leaks, because the CPAP machines these days are so silent that you'll probably think the person beside you using it is dead because there's no sound. You don't hear the person snore, you don't hear the sound of the machine. It is that quiet. So when patients or patient's family feedback and say, oh, patient does not use it because it's too noisy, then we know it's leaks. Then we know how to address it, right? Then we'll tell the patient, hey, you need to tighten your mask, right? If you don't want the noise. And it's precisely because of the leaks that the pressure or the airflow is surging and causing more discomfort when you use it, right? So there are a lot of things that we won't know just by looking at the reports. Yes, we do have access to the patient's data on a daily basis, but for example, leaks. Some patients are totally unfazed by leaks. They don't even hear it, right? Even if their leaks go up to 80 liters, I don't even know how that is possible. They don't even know it's leaking and they sleep through all the leaks, all the sounds, the hissing sounds. But there are some patients who get disturbed by the slightest leak, like even 10 liters of leak, right? So without getting feedback like this from the family members, we will not, I won't say we will not be able to manage the patient effectively, but we'll probably take a longer time because we'll need to go one big round before we identify the problem, right? Instead of going straight to the point. Okay, what's next? Family members also play the role of a cheerleader. Sometimes patients don't see the effects, right? Or they look for bigger, more obvious effects that they miss out on the little changes that have taken place since they have started using the CPAP. So what the family members can do is to tell the patients, hey, I think you seem more lively, you seem more awake now after using the CPAP. Or hey, do you notice that you're not taking naps anymore in the afternoon? Things like that. Well, I'm not asking you to tell a lie. Like even when the patient looks like he's got run over by a truck, you tell him, oh, you look so awake now. No, I'm not asking anyone to lie, but there are little things which people around the patient can probably pick up better than the patient himself or herself. Yeah. So one of the things which I have noticed from my own patients is that family members often notice how refreshed they are in the morning, especially on Sundays, because on Sundays, patients usually sleep in, they usually wake up later. It's usually very hard to drag them out of bed prior to using the CPAP. But a lot of the wives, the husbands actually tell me, hey, now on Sundays, the patient actually just jumps up and say, hey, let's go for a walk. And that's good. But sometimes the patient may not notice it. So as the observer, you should encourage the patient by letting him know all the little things that you've noticed, be it less waking up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. It can be not lazing in bed, waking up even before the alarm clock rings, not taking naps in the afternoon, not dozing off while driving, things like that. Yeah? So that is what I mean by being a cheerleader, okay? It's not to make up stories to make the patient happy. No, don't do that, yeah. Because just in case the patient is really feeling horrible and if you need some help, he might actually think, oh, really? I'm actually doing well? Okay, then let's forget about bringing up the issues that I'm facing, yeah. So no, don't make up stories, okay, to make the patient happy, yeah. The next one, that of a policeman or policewoman. Okay, so besides encouraging the patient, I think it's also important that family members from time to time check on the patient to see if they're using the machine. Well, I mean, of course, you're sleeping in the same room, you'll be able to tell if you're using the machine. And if the patient is not using it for the night, nudge him or her and say, hey, use your mask, use your CPAP machine. And have frequent checks to ensure that the breaks in between the usage is not too long. Well, once in a while, patients may want to take like a 1-day break, 2 days break. Although I do not encourage it, especially if the patient is a newbie and is still in the midst of getting used to CPAP therapy. But I guess 1 day is okay. But if it goes beyond that, like 2 days, 3 days, it's time for the family members to actually remind the patient to use it or demand that the patient uses it. Yeah. So I think it's much easier because for us, yes, I look at the reports. During the trial, I usually look at it every day, every alternate days, every 2 or 3 days. So we may not be able to notice certain things immediately. So it's easier for the patient's family, who are beside him or her, to be the one to help to look out for little things like that. Non-compliance, or if patient puts it on for like 2 hours and says, I don't want to use this, 2 hours is enough. So someone has to be there to constantly remind him, constantly nag him or her into using the CPAP machine regularly. Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to having supportive family members, it's not about being tolerant to your spouse's snoring, because if I bring it up, it shows that I'm not being tolerant. I should be tolerant since I've decided to marry him or her, and I should keep quiet about it and just tolerate or tahan. Yeah? No. I think there is a limit to what you should be tolerant towards and what you shouldn't be tolerant towards. I mean, if your spouse likes to stick his teeth in public or something like that, okay, maybe you can be tolerant if you want to, yeah, because that doesn't pose much of a health risk or anything like that. But when it comes to things like snoring, sleep apnea, that can lead to greater problems, like, as we all know, hypertension, and if it's still unaddressed, strokes, cardiac issues, for some even sudden cardiac death. I think it's not something you want to just keep quiet about in order to be that tolerant, understanding husband or wife. Because at the very end of it all, if you don't bring it up and something does happen to your husband or your wife down the road, and you know that it is partly contributed by obstructive sleep apnea, I think there's going to be a lot of guilt in you for not having brought it up earlier, knowing that there was a problem. So yes, I have met people like that before. I have a personal friend who was very, very reluctant, or rather who totally refused to let the husband know how loud he was snoring, which actually was also disturbing her sleep. So she actually said that she thought that, or she felt that her rising blood pressure is actually because of the bad sleep that she was getting because of the husband snoring. So I said, why don't you tell him? And she said, no lah, it's not nice to tell him that, he may feel bad about it. But I said, between feeling bad and between having a serious health problem down the road, I think I'd rather him or her feel bad now about it, and if it can prevent greater problems down the road. So eventually, yes, she spoke to the husband. Husband felt really bad because he was totally clueless that he was actually disturbing her sleep. So he very willingly said, okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm going to, let's go to the ENT tomorrow and get this sorted out. And yes, he did. Eventually, he started using the CPAP. And guess what? Her blood pressure has gone down again because she's getting better sleep. Yeah? So it's not just about the patient himself. Yeah, the person with obstructive sleep apnea. His obstructive sleep apnea, his snoring, can affect much more than what you expect. Yeah? People around him, his work, high risk of motor vehicle accidents. Yeah, so don't be tolerant when it comes to someone's health or someone's safety. Then we have family members who are very supportive, once again in the wrong way. We have a patient who did very well during the CPAP trial. From an AHI of, if I'm not wrong, about 30 or maybe 30 or 38, about there, moderate to severe, we managed to bring it down to 2 point something. Yeah, and it was quite tricky because majority of his apneas were central apneas and not obstructive apneas. So we used fixed CPAP on him, we titrated, and yeah, eventually we managed to get it, and it consistently stayed at 2-1 per hour. His AHI, yeah. So the family comes along and highlights that the leaks are very loud, the leaks from his mouth, that is. So they have asked me what they could do about it. So honestly, when it comes to, okay, if it's mask leaks, of course, tighten your mask. If tightening your mask doesn't help, then maybe the mask fits wrong, or the mask may not be suitable for you. Like some people want or like the nasal cradle mask, but if your nose is very flat, it's not suitable because it not only slides from side to side, it slides up because there's nothing to hold it down, even if you tighten your mask. Yeah? And any more tightening will make your nose very painful because it's pushing up. So that is mask leaks. But when it comes to mouth leaks, there are only these few options. Firstly, use a full face mask, which he said no, he's not very keen on using a full face mask. I fully understand that. So I suggested taping, using micropore tape. Actually, a lot of my patients prefer using micropore tape to just tape the lip together over using a chin strap. Because using a chin strap can be a bit troublesome, especially when you're tired, you're rushing to go to sleep, and you still have to put on the chin strap before putting on your mask. And I think for some, they can be a little bit warm for them if you're not sleeping in an aircon room. So using micropore tape is better received. Yeah. So I suggest all these to him, taping the mouth, using a chin strap, using a full face mask. And they said no, they don't want any of these choices. So at that point, I did ask the patient, is it affecting you? And he said, actually, no, his sleep has improved greatly. He's been having more restful sleep. But once again, family comes in and tells him that even if he's not affected by the loud leaks from the mouth, that doesn't mean it's not harmful to him. Yeah, so initially I was wondering what harm they were talking about, and patient said that his family member had used that audio level meter. I don't know what it's called. Is it an audio level meter? To measure the sound of the leaks coming from his mouth. So they put the audio level meter beside him, and they said it was 52 decibels. So I said, okay, how is that going to harm you? From what I understand, your aircon is probably like 30-ish, 30-ish to 40 decibels. 50 decibels is when you have a soft conversation. Not when you talk at my volume. I'm incapable of having a soft conversation. Okay, but I think normal soft conversations is about 50, 52, thereabouts. So how is that going to harm you? And he said that his family didn't want him to continue using the CPAP because in the long run, it's going to cause him to go deaf. And I'm like, where did that come from? If that level of noise is going to cause you to go deaf in the long run, and you're talking about leaks, right? Then maybe we should all stop talking because we might all go deaf in time to come if we continue talking to each other, especially at my volume. I was really concerned because he was doing well, and he did admit that his sleep was better. But it was always the family members that would call me and say, no, his sleep quality is worse, and I'm genuinely worried for this person because we managed to bring it down to 2 point something, 1 point something. All was good, everything was stabilizing, and the family members decide that he should stop using CPAP. So instead, they have gone ahead to get him an oral appliance. So as I mentioned, majority of his apneas are central apneas and not obstructive apneas. So I'm really not sure how it's going to help him, or if it's going to help him that much. Yeah, I think the dentist did explain to him that hopefully with the airway widened, he'd get more oxygen, and hopefully his brain gets used to the new level of oxygen that he's getting, and the central apneas may start to subside. But I think that is probably more applicable to treatment emergent central apneas, I think. I'm not too sure, but I thought so. Yes, we lost one patient like that because he obviously will not listen to me and rather listen to his family members. For family members, you want to be supportive, you want to give advice to the patient. Please make sure that whatever you have Googled, whatever you have read from whichever source are credible sources. And whatever you have read are facts and not assumptions that people make or just, I don't know, coffee shop talk or something like that. Because you would end up harming the patient instead of helping the patient. I do understand that a lot of these things are done because of love for a family member. But by doing so, you are not helping your family member in any way if you get your facts wrong and you decide to stop CPAP therapy, which has been working really well for your family member. Well, I've got stories of other family members who are so supportive, who have been going around egging family members on to do a sleep test and to be compliant to CPAP therapy. So there's this young lady who first got to know about obstructive sleep apnea because her Muay Thai coach was diagnosed with it. And they're very close with the coach, so they accompanied the coach to see the ENT, to come by my clinic. And she started getting worried when I was explaining to them about snoring, obstructive sleep apnea. And she said, I think my dad has it, but I think my dad did a sleep test before. I'll try asking my dad for his sleep report. So she goes home. Her dad is someone who is obviously not very keen to address his obstructive sleep apnea. So obviously he said, oh no, I lost the report, I don't have it. But Naz, no, it's fine, I'm doing okay. Blood pressure is okay, everything is okay. So she asked me, what should I do next? And I said, when was his last sleep study done? And she said, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, well, maybe get him to do another one. And she speaks to him and he's like, no, I don't like all the wires and all that. And I say, don't worry, we've got WhatsApp. Right? So it's very simple to use. You don't feel so tied up, so restricted by the wires. So yeah, he had no choice but to do it because he had no excuse not to do it. So I sent the WatchPad 1 kit to them. They did the sleep study, came back. Yes, it's moderate. Yeah, moderate to severe, thereabouts. I think it was like 29 or something. And once again, he was not very keen on going ahead with CPAP therapy. But she dragged him here. She dragged him to the clinic and insisted that he did the mask fitting and everything. And he said, okay, it's not that bad. So he used it for a bit and then his usage started dwindling, right? It started becoming less than 4 hours. It started becoming alternate days. And she would be the one to keep reminding him. And when she really couldn't take it anymore, she did her research. She actually printed out studies that actually showed the correlation between heart disease and unaddressed obstructive sleep apnea, things like that, and got her father to sit down and read it. And guess what? The next day, or the next few days, few weeks, he used it without fail. And he tried to keep the mask on him and he tried to use it for at least 4 hours. Even when he went to the toilet, when he came back, he would put the mask on. As compared to previously, when he removed it, he would just be like, okay, I'm not going to put it back on. Not only that, she recently came by to buy another mask for the father because she feels that perhaps the other mask is not very suitable for him, which is why he keeps yanking it off. So she came by to buy another mask, and not only that, she actually told me that her uncle, who's her father's brother, has the same issue, and he was actually diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea pretty long ago as well. Never got it addressed. Had a stroke a few years or many years ago. So whenever they ask him to seek help, he would say, no, you see, I've had a stroke and I'm still okay, don't worry, nothing's gonna happen to me. At the most, I'll just die. I'm ready, how old, I don't know, 60 plus, whatever. And she is still trying to persuade him until today to redo his sleep study and to start using the CPAP. So this girl is someone who has been giving a lot of support to the people around her once she finds out that they may have or most probably have obstructive sleep apnea. If all family members can be like that, I think many family members or many people with obstructive sleep apnea would be compelled to come forward and get treated. So don't undermine the role of the family in supporting a patient with obstructive sleep apnea. It's not only supporting the patient but highlighting it in order to get the ball rolling. Because if you don't even highlight it, there's no other way to kickstart it. So okay, if you have a family member that you think might have obstructive sleep apnea, you've heard him stop breathing or heard her stop breathing when she sleeps, if you're not too sure, contact me, or you can go to our first episode about self-assessment of risk for obstructive sleep apnea. Use the Stop Bang questionnaire to see if your family member is at a high risk or a low risk or intermediate risk of obstructive sleep apnea. Any questions, no worries. You can just call me, email me. I think if it's just like 1 or 2 questions which you want to clarify, I can do that without charging you. Okay? Of course, if you come in and you spend an hour, 2 hours with me, yes, I will need to charge. Okay, so that's all for now. I hope more of you will egg your family members to come forward if they have obstructive sleep apnea or if they're snoring very, 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 very loudly. That's all for now. I'll see you soon in my next episode. Bye!